Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast, where we have a very special episode for you. Today, I'm excited to hand over to the amazing Peter Czapp and Paul Bulpitt, co-founders of the very business that brings you this podcast, the Wow Company. Wow are the UK's leading accountants who specialise in working with agencies, consultancies and tech businesses, typically with a turnover of more than £1 million, and they help them to grow beautiful businesses. I'm excited to hear about the 20-year journey that Wow has been on from Paul and Pete today, to hear what they've learnt, what they've achieved, how they've grown, and we'll find out a little bit more about them as the masterminds behind this innovative and beautiful business.
Because we can't be brilliant at everything, right? And, we've spent 8 years trying to be, and you just simply can't. But as soon as we started narrowing that focus, it was very, very clear, this is the game that we need to play. We need to look after this particular group of clients better than they've ever been looked after ever. We need to understand them better, understand their challenges, and crucially, how to solve them. And by putting those blinkers on, it just became really, really easy.
Welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast from the Wow Company. If you're searching for the right strategies, tools, and connections to ignite your thinking and elevate your business, then join us for a fortnightly dose of inspiration. Our guests range from industry-leading agencies and cutting-edge tech pioneers to motivational speakers and executives, all offering actionable insights to help you thrive in profit and purpose. So, whether you're a growing consultancy or an agency leader, this podcast is your source of knowledge and encouragement to spark meaningful change in your business and beyond.
You ready?
Are we ready? Good. Okay. Hi, I'm Paul.
I'm Peter, and today we're talking about 20 years of Wow. Let's do it. Tell me, tell everyone one thing that we might not know about you.
One thing that's quite interesting topical at the moment is that I speak Russian. I speak a few languages, but I also speak Russian, which if anyone wants to talk to me about Russia or Russians. How about you, Pete? Tell us.
Well, no one knows. Well, it's not at all in the public domain.
Do I know?
No. I've got a twin sister. No, I haven't.
But your little face. I'm like, I have so many questions. How come this hasn't come up before?
Yeah, I don't think the podcast is really the place for it.
So probably
Tell my brothers first.
Okay.
So I have appeared on the Wide Awake Club. What was it called? The Wide Awake Club.
With Timmy Mallet.
Timmy Mallet, Michaela Strachan, Tommy Boyd. I was on Collector's Corner with...
What were you collecting?
Not anything cool, unfortunately. Antique elephants. I was 10 years old. My parents used to take me around antique spares when I was a kid. I got bored. They gave me some money. I chose to buy antique elephants. And what ITV or TVM, whatever it was called back then, wanted me to do was front the campaign to stop the ivory trade. So I had to go on TV with my elephant collection and then deliver a message to camera, which I can replicate now.
Go on, do it.
So if you see ivory in the shops, don't buy it. Now, as a 10-year-old, that was a powerful message. And if you look at the graph of the ivory trade, since that moment, it plummeted.
Off a cliff.
I mean, I don't want to take all the credit, but most of it was down to that moment, which I have on VHS somewhere. And that will not see the light of day. So let's go back to the beginning. Why did we call the business Wow?
Over 21 years ago, I guess, when we were thinking about this, basically, Pete and I had a massive fight about, we were going to call it, name it by our surnames. And Pete wanted his surname to go first, but I wanted mine to go first. I'm like, what are we going to do then? And he's like, well, look, the thing about my name is it sounds like one of those things from a Batman movie, like kapow, wham, bang, ka-chap. He's like, it would just be amazing. I'm like, well, why don't we just call it Wow then? And we'll just stick that in it. And he's like, oh, well, let's call it Wow. And that's how we ended up calling it Wow.
Do you want to tell the truth? Because that is quite fabricated, quite phenomenally fabricated.
Things have changed a bit over 20 years, but even now it's still the same. You see, most professional services companies, certainly back then, were like the surnames or names of the partners, the people that had founded the business. We were very keen to create a business that wasn't about us, where our names weren't hung over the door. The names above the door thing, certainly to me, felt and feels a bit Dickensian, like from Scrooge and Marley. I don't know, give my time over again. Maybe we would have come up with something more sensible. But I think at the time, to call ourselves Wow was a real statement of intent. We were really clear about having an impact, and kind of the idea of calling ourselves Wow was simple, easy to remember, but also set a standard for the impact we intended to have. And I think we've seen over 20 years, we've been able to go back to that and say, well, look, are we wow? We've also had it played back to us where people have said, well, that's not very wow, is it? And so on balance, it's worked out well. Certainly in the beginning of self-selecting, there were definitely potential clients that looked at us and said, I'm not working with someone called Wow. And then conversely, there were people that loved it and really got that that's what we're about and wanted to be part of it.
I love that benchmark that you talk about, is this Wow? And just constantly measuring ourselves against that standard. But it was, if you think back, it was pretty ballsy, really.
It's ludicrous. And even now, it was really stupid.
But better than calling ourselves Bulpitt or Czapp or Bulpitt. I mean, there's a Z in my name. No one would have found us on Google or any other search engine.
But also the point that it wasn't about us. Like thinking back to those early days, what are your fondest memories of those sort of early days 20 years ago?
I loved the early days. They were so exciting. And there was the before the business bit where we used to meet in Cafe Nero in Winchester every Saturday and talk about the business we're going to build, talk about what we were passionate about, what we thought excellence looked like, and scribbled loads of notes. And, occasionally we'd bring out the book to remind ourselves of that. But that felt like a bit like a school project until there was that moment where you asked a question and said, well, I'm chucking in my job, are you? And then suddenly it didn't feel like a school project anymore. It was real. And that's when the excitement really kicked in. And in the early days, what I loved about those was the simplicity of it. When you have no clients and no team, there's really only one thing that you need to worry about, which is picking up clients and doing an amazing job for them. But when you have nothing, you just got to go and pick up clients. And I still remember really fondly the target. We had this view, if I could have 3 sales meetings per week, one of those 3 would become a client. And by the end of year 1, we'd have 50 clients. And so I had that one simple objective, 3 meetings a week. And I'd wake up on a Monday with 3 to get. And then hopefully by Wednesday, I might need to get 1 or 2 more. But I knew I had to get to Friday at 5 o'clock doing those 3. And I had a big, remember those giant Post-it notes?
Sticky.
Yeah, huge, almost as big as half of me. And I just had number 3, number 2, number 1, and then a picture of a beer on it. And as I did my first meeting, there would be a 2, and then the second meeting a 1. And I knew that once I got my third one, I was allowed to go and celebrate. And I love the simplicity. I love the energy. It was magic. Yeah.
But also, so you touched on it a little bit then. The other thing we're really good at then was the celebrating as well. So you got this thing that anything's possible, but we were really good at celebrating. We would book a meeting, celebrate. We would book a client, sign a client, and we would celebrate. We would deliver a client meeting and we would celebrate. And now it feels like it takes an awful lot more for us to celebrate, which is probably an interesting reflection. I remember all we'd done was picked up a client and we went out and, can I say?
Yeah, I remember. I know exactly where we were as well. And I remember what we drank. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember what we spent because it was pretty much the value of the client.
All of the profit went on us celebrating. But I think actually it was really important. At that point, you don't know what we know now, right? We didn't know whether or not it was going to work.
And I think those moments, those highs, winning a client, getting great feedback, maybe even hiring our first member of the team, they felt so monumental alongside the lows because everything was so accentuated. Because, when you're hanging by a thread almost in those early days, you're not really sure. You have the inner belief, but we didn't know we'd end up with this business that we had now. And so those moments of validation were definitely worth celebrating. It kept you going until the next one and the next one. So yeah, the they really mattered. And yeah, I'm really happy that we celebrated. But I think as we go through the journey, there's definitely a case for finding reasons to celebrate. Otherwise, kind of what's the point? You just roll on to the next and the next and the next, and actually just taking a moment to look back and go, crikey, look how far we have come. I think that's really important. When you look back, we'll go right back to the start. What was the vision for the business back then in 2004, and how has that changed over the years?
So I think the bit when you talked before about when we used to meet up on like Saturday mornings and like plot and plan, and you had this book that you mentioned before that still gets like brought out a bit, like your mum bringing out like the baby photos at your birthday party. And in there we talked about what we wanted to be, what we wanted to stand for, and what we wanted to achieve. And I think all of those bits are the same today as they were 20 years ago. We talked about the difference we wanted to make. We talked about the type of organisation we wanted to build. And slowly, like over time, that then maybe about 10 years ago, like we tried to codify that in the Beautiful Business Manifesto. And I think that stands up today really as our vision about soulful, people-centred, purpose-driven businesses. And that was the same in 2004 as it is in 2025, right? I guess exactly what we do, all the services we offered have evolved and developed over time. But I don't know, would you agree? I think that core vision is actually the same now as it was.
And it does, completely agree, because it amazes me when I do occasionally bring out that book on those key anniversaries, or when I'm feeling nostalgic, to look back at what we wrote 20 years ago. The fundamentals haven't changed. How our passion for wanting to make a difference. I guess the difference is now we've built a team that share that passion, and that's the really exciting bit, to think that when we started it was just us two, and now we have 60 odd people who all share that passion and that drive for excellence and wanting to make a difference, helping people build those beautiful businesses. I suppose that's the key difference. We've been very fortunate to find that group of people that share those values.
Yeah, and that's the exciting bit looking forwards, right? And maybe we'll get to that a bit later in this chat. But is now the scale of the impact we can have is so much bigger than it was 20 years ago. And I think that fire that we had in us, where we looked around at the support that people running businesses were getting, was really mediocre, was really average. And like, interestingly, I think maybe it's got a bit better, but fundamentally, if you're a what we call like a beautiful business, if you've got sort of like 8+ staff, but you're not quite like a big business, the level of support you get from your professional advisors is kind of is poor. And that's where we've really developed our niche, I suppose, is to really serve those types of people, those types of businesses. And the passion we have today is exactly the same, if not more so, than we had 20 years ago, to actually really make a difference to those people running those businesses.
So how has innovation played a part over the last 20 years? Because I know it's been right at the forefront of a lot of our thinking and a lot of the actions that we've taken. What's your take on that?
So I think at the beginning we started with nothing. We didn't have any clients. We needed a way to stand out, and I think by being different was a way that we could stand out and have an edge. We can go toe to toe with your traditional accountants, your traditional professional services firms 20 years ago. So innovation was really how we stood out. I think we were quite heavily influenced by Tom Peters, also Seth Godin's Purple Cow thing. This idea that if you're driving home this evening and you saw a purple cow in the field, you'd notice it, you'd talk about it, you'd tell other people about it. But also, if all you saw were purple cows, after a while you get bored, so you needed to keep finding like the next purple cow, as it were. I think it's just driven us on. I think we've attracted people to work with us that are also up for that level of innovation or disruption, finding better ways of doing things. So I'd say initially it was all about an edge. I think what that developed into was, how can we have the biggest possible impact? And things like, I think most people know we're very early adopters with Xero.
Can you remember how we discovered it?
Yeah, so the Xero story is really interesting. We had a client who had emigrated to New Zealand, and he came back for a party, and we met him, and he said, "Oh, there's this thing in New Zealand that is just amazing, and you guys need to get on it." And we looked at it, and we're like, this is everything. It was kind of, we found something that we didn't even know existed, but we felt should exist. And here it was there in a box, and wasn't quite ready for the UK. It still had dollar signs and some of the language, but it was just like good enough to prove a point. And I think the other bit that I think about is the amount of resistance we had. Some of the people working for us at the point were very skeptical that this would ever work, but we just seemed to find a group of people, and when we started talking to clients about it, people loved it, and it really snowballed. And we obviously, Xero then came to the UK, had a lot of investment. You see them on billboards all over London now, and we were fortunate enough to ride that wave. I think it was 2013, so over 10 years ago, we were the Xero Partner of the Year. So a lot of that innovation isn't necessarily innovation for innovation's sake, to show that how clever we are, or the next silver shiny thing. But you look at especially Xero and Dex, these are products that have absolutely transformed the way that businesses operate. And why have we innovated? Like in that case, just because it's the really obvious thing to do. And I think people that were late to the party really struggled.
It's obvious now, but it wasn't back then. Like, it was a huge deal. I remember the first time that Will opened his laptop in a pub in Southampton, connecting to the Wi-Fi, and showed us accounting software. But before, you had to have machines plugged into giant mainframes to access accounting software, and we're passing around CDs. So it was revolutionary. And there was a number of accountants out there that said this simply won't work. It's crazy. But now, if you're not using online software, I mean, I can't imagine what alternative there is. So it's obvious now, and it was obvious to us, but it was not obvious to the rest of the world. There was a few other things that we did. I remember in the old days, you have to sign accounts, actually wet signatures, and then post them back, and absolute crazy. And we had to fight the ICAW, the
Institute of Accountants,
for permission to sign things digitally, which was a far more secure way of doing it, because it had digital signatures rather than any old scribble. But again, we were the first accountants to do that, first with Xero, first with Receipt Bank. And all those first, it gave us an advantage, but it gave our clients a huge advantage as well. And I love that about what we do, is how that innovation drives the client experience. Well, how do we maintain that as we go on? Because it felt easier to do back then, when we were smaller and maybe more nimble, making a decision about changing accounting software. What does innovation look like now we're 60 odd people?
It's a really good point, isn't it? Because when you're, I don't know, what were we, 8, 10, 12 people when we started using Xero, probably maybe a bit bigger. It was really easy, because of the team dynamic, just to say, well, guys, what do you think? This is what we're going to do. And to be fair, we did have like 1 or 2 dissenters on the team that took a stand against Xero. But I think the opportunity we have now, obviously it takes longer, because there's more people you need to get on board, and there's more people you need to train up, and systems. There's just more moving parts, so it is going to take longer. But I still come back to the fact that the impact you can have, the scale with which we're currently doing this, is that much greater. I think, would we be quite so early adopters today? Maybe not. We probably would be a bit more circumspect, and we don't need to. There's not that benefit for being like the first one in. We'll be sort of like the second or third one in. We'll see that something's proven. And I guess it's on us to be conscious of that risk that we get we're like, well, it works. Well, why break it? But I think because of the way that we're wired and the people we have around us, that I don't know. I don't want to tempt fate. I don't think that would happen. And I think we're just the kind of people, certainly I am, who like breaking things just because why not? Let's see what happens and let's do. And it's, I like doing that because we've seen the results and reaped the benefits of doing that time after time. I don't think we'll stand still. Pete, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned over 20 years or in those 20 years of WAP?
There's a fair few, but I would say the biggest one, if I had my time over again, I really wish we'd have niched down sooner. So when we started the business, we did accounts for anyone. And it took us 8 years to figure out that it might be beneficial to narrow our focus and say no a little bit more, quite a bit more. And we now specialize in agencies, consultancies, and also tech. But certainly the focus on agencies and consultancies has massively helped us raise our game. Because we focused from, I think, 2012 onwards, we're now at a point where no one can touch us in terms of the service that we offer. We are so specialized. We're so add so much value to those clients. We know them so well that the gap's just too big. And, I like the challenge of maintaining that gap because there are plenty of imitators out there. But we've worked so hard since 2012 just to narrow that focus and do more than just say, look, we specialize in. We've gone really deep with this and really understanding the challenges of the clients that we work with. We've started benchmarking them. And what started off as a tiny little report has grown and grown and grown. And those insights that we have within the team about what it takes to really build a profitable and sustainable agency or consultancy, that's gold. That's our secret sauce. And for any agencies, consultancies out there, that's one of the key reasons they come to us because they simply cannot get that anywhere else. So narrowing focus, niching, my goodness, I wish we'd done that sooner.
Yeah, and I get also just following on from what you said, how that really feeds through into the service we deliver. It's not just that there's lots of people out there that say, oh, we specialize in this, we specialize in that, but actually the whole our client's experience, the service we offer is all tailored around that, tailored around those years of insight, isn't it?
Because we can't be brilliant at everything, right? And we've spent 8 years trying to be. You just simply can't. But as soon as we started narrowing that focus, it was very, very clear this is the game that we need to play. We need to look after this particular group of clients better than they've ever been looked after ever. We need to understand them better, understand their challenges, and crucially, how to solve them. And by putting those blinkers on, it just became really, really easy. Right, these are the people that we look after. How can we understand them better than anyone else in the world and then deliver on the things that are really, really important to them? Because we can't be brilliant at everything, and I think it's daft to try.
Yeah, and I get that's a useful business lesson itself, right? You can't be all things to all people, and actually there's much more value in being the specialist or the expert. It's been so long that I feel like we've always done this, but you're quite right. It took us 8 years to get there. Why agencies, consultancies, tech businesses was the focus?
I remember I woke up one day and I did some analysis of our clients, and I figured out that 50% of them were agencies, and then there was a huge chunk of consultancies and also a big chunk of tech, and then a load of random other ones. And I looked at our NPS scores as well. So when we looked at our NPS scores, we noticed a couple of things. First of all, they were higher amongst the areas where we had specialism in, accidental specialism at this stage. Yeah. We hadn't figured it out. But what we also noticed was our NPS scores, so our net promoter scores, were highest amongst the people that spent more money with us. So suddenly, and you probably remember this as well, I thought it'd be the opposite, right? I thought the people who paid us the least would be the most happy because they're getting a great deal. Yeah. But actually, the ones that spent more money with us were getting a better service. We were doing more for them. We were providing more insights. We were really helping them on their journey of growth. And they valued us more highly for it. So I think that was the moment where we figured out, right, let's focus in on delivering really high value to this smaller group of clients, and let's go deep with this. Let's really, really go deep and invest that time to build up our capability to become truly world class at this. So I think that was a pivotal moment when we started measuring NPS, and obviously that improved the whole client experience. But those insights, once we saw them, it just blew our minds, didn't it? To think, crikey, it's the opposite of what we thought. Let's use this.
I think there was something else that you said there about kind of goes back to something else that I think has always really worked really well for us, is to take that longer term view. Because in the moment, it's really hard to turn away business, to say, no, we're not going to work with these people. But actually, by taking that longer term view, and it wasn't like a 1, 2 or 3 year view, it really took years for this strategy to pay off, of having fewer clients that we do more stuff for.
So when you reflect then on 20 years, what's been the biggest lesson you've learned?
The biggest lesson, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is the people. Oh, wow. It's certainly been one of the hardest lessons as well, that really it's all about the people. And we can make all the plans, all the spreadsheets we want, but really it's about the people, and it's about, to use the Jim Collins thing about having the right people on the bus, the right people on the bus in the right seats, and also not having the wrong people on the bus by comparison. And that's taken us years to work through, really. But the joy of seeing people people that have been with us, I think Jeff would have been with us 20 years in January, and to see him develop, grow, buy his first house, have children, get married, all of this stuff, all of those life stages, and see that is phenomenal. There's a bunch of other people at WOW that have been with us well over 10 years at this point. And to think that they've given so much of their professional career, so much of their life to WOW, is just awesome in the most genuine sense of the word. And I really hope that for those people, when they're 80 years old, they'll look back and reflect and think that these have been some of the best times of their lives. But learning how to find those people, how to make sure that the likes of Kelly or Hannah have everything they need to thrive and prosper, has definitely been the biggest lesson for me personally.
So there was a time we weren't so good at this, versus now, where I think we're really good at finding those people and nurturing them. What would you characterize as the difference between then and now?
I don't think we have it cracked by a long way. And for full disclosure, show me someone that does think that they have it cracked, and I think they're deluded. But some of the points you made about niching actually relate here, just being a lot bolder. I think being clearer ourselves on who's going to fly at WOW and who won't. There's not I think it's really about values and people that share the same values as us. And I think it becomes an awful lot clearer now that we hire on values, that we promote on values, that whether it's going to work or not. And I think we'd all see cases where it's just really obvious much earlier, but it's not going to work. And actually the kindest, fairest thing to do is have those conversations with people.
And they really are an amazing group of people. I don't think, in fact, I know there's not a bunch of people out there in the land that care more about the clients that they work with every single day and making the difference. It is truly, truly special. I would love for a client, anyone, to be a fly on the wall. We don't have an office anymore, but when we had an office, I used to occasionally overhear conversations with people and think, oh my God, these people are going the extra mile. They didn't know I was there. I was around the corner, but listening to those conversations, seeing how much people care has been truly magic. I think you talk about values. We've just got a lot better at hiring. It's a lot harder to get a job at WOW now than it was 10 years ago. And one of the things that helped with that is Kelly's mantra. Do you want to share a little bit about Kelly's mantra? Because it has made a difference.
So Kelly and I went to a conference, and there was a guy that said, right, the secret to recruitment is that when you speak to someone, they're a hell yes or a, these aren't my words, they're either a hell yes or a F no. And it just made complete sense. And like, how many times, whether or not it's recruitment, how many decisions in life you try and like fit it and you think, well, do you know what, it might work, or it might, like, never does. You think, if you've ever bought a house, like, you know the minute you've walked in the door that this is probably the house. Sometimes, do you know, when you're stretched, you're so keen to, like, I just need someone. I need someone with a pulse that can count, ideally spell, but that's fine. As long as they can count and they've got a pulse, we'll get them in because we're really stretched. But every time you end up paying the price. So Kelly's thing is, look, we'll make do if there's a hole for a little bit to make sure that over time we get the right person. We're not just hiring the best person that was available to us out of the 6 or 7 people that we interviewed. We're going to get the very best person that we can get.
Love it. As a decision-making framework, I think there's very few that are better than that. It's hell yes or it's no.
Yeah,
I love it.
So Pete, from your perspective, what's the secret to Wow having been around for 20 years? You know, there's lots of businesses that don't make it this far. We must have done something right at some point.
Yeah, and I often look back to those early days and think of some of the businesses that we started at similar time to us. I mean, some have gone on to do all right. I think Facebook was started same year as well. But there were lots of brilliant businesses, really talented people that didn't make it, that were fallen by the wayside. And I think one of the first things that's made the difference, is the reason we're here today, is our team. Honestly, I couldn't be more proud of the team that we've assembled, the work that they do, the impact that they have for clients. They are just truly amazing. And hands down, I think that's the number one reason we're here after 20 years with such a bright prospects ahead. I think there's also something around financial discipline. I know it sounds a bit boring, but I look back on, I was 24 when I set up when we set up the business together, and it took 11 years for me to earn what I was earning at 24. So I had to wait till I was 35 years old to earn the salary that I was on when I was 24 years old. And that was because that was a conscious decision for both of us to leave money in the business and invest in the long-term future, knowing it would come good eventually, but also it allowed us to withstand any shocks, because there were plenty of shocks or downturns, and we were able in those moments to say, it's all right, we've got this, we've got the cash in the bank, and we don't need to panic. We can calmly, in a measured way, take a long-term view and continue to invest in the growth of that business. So I think, well, not just financial discipline, but just discipline and rigor in general, just focusing on what matters and turning up and doing it again and again and again, whether you're tired or strung out, just finding a way to just keep going and keep going. I think that's made a difference. And I think if I was to pick another one, I'd say it's the alignment between you and I. One of the most favorite parts of my week, and I can't remember when we started doing this. We didn't do it in the early days, but certainly for several years now, midday on a Friday, we meet up, we go for a walk, and we just chat. And to anyone looking in, it looks like we're not doing any work. And to an extent, they're probably right, because we're going for a walk and then finding a pub. But the conversations we have, the alignment that we create, the ideas that we come up with, the seeds that we sow, there have been so many things, brilliant things that have happened at Wow that we can point to a walk and a conversation that was shared. And, even if no ideas come out of those walks, it's the alignment and the togetherness that I think is part of the magic and helps us, still be here after 20 years.
It's kind of that support as well, isn't it? Like, you talked before about like the consistency and turning up, and actually, I know a lot of people that don't have business partners, and it's like a lot harder because you don't have that. There'll be times where you turn up and you're a bit frazzled, and hopefully I bring you back up. If anyone that knows me believes that I can have that impact on someone. But conversely, there's a million times where like you've been there for me and we've just helped each other, like shared the energy, supported each other through that. And it'd be really easy for us to go weeks or months without talking to each other, I guess. So that weekly thing's been has been a really beautiful thing.
I can assure you, if I'd have done this on my own, there's no way that this business would exist at all, let alone in the wonderful position it's in now. It would have just been too hard.
Whereas conversely, if I'd have done this on my own, I definitely would have had Ferraris and private jets by now.
He's double the size.
Okay.
Now we know who's holding who back.
You know that's not true, by the way.
We've talked a lot about the past, and I've loved doing that. But let's look a little bit ahead now. When it comes to the future, what do you see?
Yeah, so I think kind of like the overarching idea is this thing about building a forever business, right? The quote around plant trees that you'll never appreciate the shade of is kind of been one of those guiding principles that's led us through. And I think now even more than ever, we both got children who are growing up much too quickly, and we are increasingly looking even further ahead to the future, thinking about legacy. And this idea of building a forever business is something that I think motivates both of us immensely to build something that will be here like long after we're gone, and truly works independently of us. I think more specifically, I think there's three things really. We talk a lot about being the most loved advisors for agencies, consultants in tech businesses. And it's not about being the biggest or anything else. It's definitely about being the most loved. And that kind of like flows through what we do, and thinking about how we can go like even deeper with the businesses we work with. My thing's always been, how can people come and work with us? How can we help them be more successful, whatever success means to them, than if they'd not worked with us? And that kind of comes back to our methodology. And I think there's so much more we can do, I think, with like harnessing technology, harnessing the great people we have. I think there's even more to develop that methodology to help people, and help people on a greater scale, have a bigger impact. That'd be number one. I think number two, I know we've talked a lot about the people, but it's all about the people, like really developing this elite, high-performing team, people that like you look around the room and think, wow, I'm lucky to be in the same room as those, which happens now frequently. I think we can really, really push that forward. But also, I think the bit that gets overlooked, one of our core values is about having fun. And I think sometimes it's a throwaway thing, but I'm really passionate that like we all deliver our best, we all learn our best, we all have the best time when we're having fun. And I think really finding a way to crack that in a remote first world as well, that we've got this like elite high performing team whose days are filled with laughter. That's kind of a problem or a challenge that I'm thinking a lot about at the moment. That'd be number two. And then I think number three, the work we do and think about how we can genuinely have a sustainable social and environmental impact with the work we do. And I think there's ways we can do it, but like you talk about what's the future hold, and I think the legacy that I think you and I would want to leave would be some sort of regenerative, sustainable business model that has definitely does no harm, but also has a positive social and environmental impact.
Yeah, I know as the business has matured, as we've got a little bit older, that's become more and more important to us. And I love the idea of looking back with great pride on the positive impact we've had, not just on the people that we work with, not on our clients, but on the wider world. I think it's one of the key pillars of our beautiful business philosophy, and it's one that I'm particularly fired up about exploring over the coming years. So if you could go back to 2004, the point at which we set this up, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't do it. I think would probably be with the 20 years hindsight would probably be the advice that I would give that idiot that had that stupid idea at that point. But I think on a more serious point, I think actually it was some of that kind of delusional spirit that actually got us to start the business, that got us going, that got us our first clients and our first team members. And actually, I think when we've been at our best is when that fire's been burning. But I think 2004 me would be telling 2025 me to keep going, keep believing, keep that fire, and keep doing the stupid stuff.
Yeah, love it.
What advice would you give your 2004 self?
I'd probably just keep it simple. I'd probably just say, it'll all be all right. It'll all be all right. And just enjoy the journey. So trust it will be all right and just enjoy the journey, because as you know, as anyone listening to this knows, being a business owner is quite a ride. And there's times when it's really, really tough. And I think just to remind myself, just to remind everyone listening to this, that it all works out in the end. It always does. And just enjoy that particular moment, because it will soon be a distant memory. So I certainly have enjoyed large chunks of it. It would just be nice to have that advice on my shoulder at the particularly challenging moments. But yeah, I was right. It does all work out in the end.
And enjoy the journey bit. I think quite often we've been in a rush to get where we're going, and probably good advice now. So I think that brings us to the end. One question that we ask all of our guests at the end of every episode is, what does beautiful business mean to you?
So there's lots that's in that manifesto, but the bit that particularly resonates with me is taking that long-term view, doing the right thing and taking the long-term view is something that we've always done. And I've always been very grateful that we have done those things. What about you?
So for me, it's like everything comes back to purpose-driven and people-centered businesses. Like you look at all of the businesses that we love, that we like truly love, and they are purpose-driven, people-centered businesses. We wouldn't love a business if it wasn't purpose-driven nor people-centered. So that's what beautiful business means to me.
Cool. And we'd love to know what beautiful business means to you too. Have a read of the manifesto and get in touch. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Great.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much, Pete. Loads of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Beautiful Business Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please remember to subscribe and leave us a review. For more advice and practical tips on what it's really like to build a beautiful business, visit our content hub at wowco.uk/hub, or check out the link in the show notes.